Heresy Hotline, this is Val. Samus is... what? The man beside me. I think you have the wrong number. Sorry about that, folks, and welcome to Heresy Hotline, your one-stop voxcast for all things Horus Heresy. I am Val, and welcome to Meet the Legions, where we introduce you to the Imperium's best and brightest. From the Emperor's Angels of Death to the courageous remembrancers that live alongside them, a Legion is more than their Primarch. Today we will be discussing the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves. Since the Horus Heresy is a book series, the first half of this video is devoted to dissecting the Legion as a literary device. It's a lot of curtains or blue stuff to get you in the right headspace for the day that you, hopefully, decide to read the Heresy for yourself. For a full breakdown of the characters, feel free to head to this timestamp. Without further ado, it's my humble pleasure to invite you to meet the Legions. The Luna Wolves paint their plate white with black accents, but can also incorporate gold or red. Their heraldry features a black wolf's head on a white field, with a white crescent moon in the background. Why are they called the Luna Wolves, I hear you asking? Because during the Unification Wars, they were deployed to Luna, the moon, and went pitbull on unsupervised toddler mode so much that they were called the Emperor's Wolves by everyone that survived the bloodbath. Ergo, Wolves, Luna, Luna Wolves. It's easy, it's free, and it's badass. The Luna Wolves were supposedly recruited from, quote, members of the hunter clans of both the Utrigan Bowl and Samsatian subplate slums of Terra. There's a couple of nouns for you, and whether the Emperor deliberately created the gene template to force a type of personality, or if he fostered a certain attitude, the Luna Wolves tended to be ferociously individualistic and very, very aggressive. When discussing Space Marines, it's always important to remember that the Legion predates the Primarch, and as such, there are usually two different types of Marines within a Legion. You have the original Marines from Terra, and the rest usually come from the Primarch's homeworld. With some legions, there is drama that comes up between Terran Marines and the Marines that grew up on the same planet as the Primarch. For example, the Death Guard and their Terran predecessors, the Dusk Raiders. In the case of the Luna Wolves, this seems to be completely non-existent. Once the Emperor discovered Horus on the semi-abandoned mining world of Chthoniya, there wasn't really a need to recruit from Terra anymore. Thankfully, the Terran Marines and the Chthonian Marines seemed to get along really well. Chthoniya was run primarily by gangs and crime families. I've heard one creator or another actually compare them to the Japanese Yakuza, and I choose to imagine the Luna Wolves through this aesthetic lens, which, by the way, is not canon, but Mad Max Cyber Yakuza Warhammer scratches a really specific itch in my brain. The Luna Wolves fought beside the Emperor, beloved by all himself, for much of the Great Crusade, with campaigns such as the Siege of Rylus, the First Compliance of Davin, and the Ulanor campaign. They are responsible for the subjugation of 6319, conquering the world of murder, and eradicating the Interrex. However, the Luna Wolves would wave a fond farewell as they were rebranded to the Sons of Horus at the end of Book 1. Yeah, it's that quick. Technically, this video is a part 1 out of 2, and so part 2 is going to focus on the Sons of Horus. Same Legion, different name. That's pretty much it of their history. All things considered, it's not that bad, given that they have one book of screen time and a bunch of implied crusades that we never really get to see. That's actually an important mechanism used in the story for them. The Luna Wolves are out the door so quickly because we're not really meant to interact with them as a legion. We're meant to interact with them as a legend. This principle is used a lot throughout the Heresy, and sure, it could just be technical gaps in the story that come from collaborating with as many people and writing as many books as there are in the Heresy. There's always little gaps, little missing pieces, spots in the canon that Games Workshop doesn't want to fill. I don't really like to look at it that way. Deliberate doesn't really matter to me. I prefer to focus on function. So let's talk imagery. The Horus Heresy is, above all, a series of books. The words, themes, and imagery take the place of set and actors. Every proper noun to descriptive word is a choice. All of your little stage pieces are how you're going to go about that. Sometimes these images are actually in the history of the words you use. For example, there is a reason that Garviel Loken is named Garviel Loken and not Joe Blow. Loken is a hero from a faraway fictional world and timeline. His name has to reflect that, which leads us to the word Chthoniya. The homeworld of the Luna Wolves is named Chthoniya, and it comes from the Greek word chthonios, meaning in, under, or beneath the earth, and it is often used as an epithet for a number of Greek gods, most particularly the gods associated with the underworld, like Persephone, Hades, and the Furies, or, for those who know, Cerberus. In modern astronomy, a Chthonian world is a theoretical class of planets where the atmosphere of a gas giant has been stripped away, leaving its solid core behind. Since Chthoniya is a mining world, I find it interesting to imagine it as one of these hypothetical planets, where you have all of these dense mineral deposits all in one spot. I am aware that the result would be some sort of hyperdense iron booger hurtling through space, but the idea of humanity carving out a habitat on the mineral-rich corpse of a world from ages past, a lot more interesting than the local copper mine, but in space. The funnest part of Warhammer is the room it leaves for you to imagine these sorts of things. There's also a concept of chthonic law, which is an anthropological theory speculated by Professor H. Patrick Glenn, and this can be defined as follows, quote, "Chthonic law is a legal tradition centered on the sacred character of the cosmos. Chthonic legal tradition emerged through experience, orality, and memory, is the oldest of all traditions, and can be understood as the law of a culture or tribe," close quote. This is interesting because Chthoniya is run by criminal gangs. People who are involved with gangs operate on a very similar sense of experience, where the biggest dog in the yard, or the elder of the group, is in charge. This person calls the shots, and all of it depends on a mutually acknowledged sense of respect based on the things that they have endured or the scars they have earned. The law of the group is based on the personal morals of their alpha dog, shall we say. This article goes on to talk about dispute resolution, which is, quote, "believed to be neither confusing nor alienating. The importance of an individual in this law depends on his or her knowledge of traditions and culture, and hence elders are valued due to their enhanced level of wisdom," close quote. This, to me, sounds like a textbook definition of Horus Lupercal's Mournival. The Mournival is the group of 4 captains that serve as Horus's inner council. A Mournival is a set of 4 aces, kings, queens, or jacks in one hand, as per the rules of a card game I have never played in my life called Glee. So, you've got 4 suits in a deck of cards, as well as 4 humors in Greek and Roman medicine and philosophy. The Egyptian sky god Horus has 4 sons of different nature who are said to collectively make up his soul. 4 corners, 4 seasons, 4 nations that lived in harmony until the Avatar fell down a rabbit hole. The 4th card in Tarot's Greater Arcana is the Emperor, and 16 squared is, you guessed it, number 4. It's a conspiracy. The Black Library is out for your soul, and only I can save you. You have 4 suits in a deck of cards, as well as 4 captains in this council. They are also associated with the 4 humors of ancient medicine and philosophy as used by the Romans and the Greeks. I will go into humoralism when I talk about the Mournival proper. Warhammer uses the humors a lot, particularly when Space Marines are talking to each other. This is prominent in Horus's Mournival Council. Each one represents one of the 4 humors, being blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. The ancient Greeks believed that the 4 humors made up the general health of a man, and if he was ill or just had a shitty personality, one of his humors must certainly be out of balance. Blood, or sanguine to use the in-universe vocabulary, represents passion, energy, and is associated with springtime. Blood is also the medium for which the other 3 humors are to be tested. This is where the concept of bloodletting comes from. Yellow bile, or choleric, was associated with aggression, temper, ambition, and summer, or the element of fire. Black bile, or melancholy, has to do with depression, torpor, contemplation, and autumn, and was also thought to be the cause of cancer. Phlegm, or the phlegmatic, usually equates to reservation, the brain, winter, and also cancer. In Horus Rising, we find out that Garviel Loken is being considered for the role of the phlegmatic, which boils down to the voice of reason. And he informs us right out of the gate that Horus's previous snot boy had been killed by an enemy known as the False Emperor. So, between the heraldry and what I've just discussed, let's step back and have a look at the stage that the author Dan Abnett has set for us. This will give us a sense of what to expect from the Luna Wolves, as they are not just trivia facts to be thrown around at your local game store. They are active participants in their own narrative. From their heraldry, we are given images of black and white. Has a lot to do with law and order and balance. I think this is enhanced by the idea of chthonic law that we went into above. It also gives us a sense of clarity, purity, and a clearly defined sense of good and evil. We are also presented with the mascot of a wolf. Wolves typically represent mystery, bitter isolation, and fierce community existing simultaneously. There's also an air of nobility in sort of a king of the jungle, divine right to rule sense. It evokes images of the wild as well as aggression and pack tactics, which we see fairly consistently throughout all of the Luna Wolves in their interactions with each other and their cousins. Last on their heraldry, we have the moon. The moon represents the subconscious as well as nighttime or dark sides. To me, it sticks out as Carl Jung's shadow self, the parts of ourselves that we regularly try to deny because they are terrifying or unpleasant to us. It also has to do with wolves, who'da thunk, huh? As well as druidic magic and nature. The word Chthoniya basically means the earth and what's underneath it. So we get mineral wealth and tectonic heat, as well as, in a more personal sense, groundedness, realism, stubbornness, reliability, and your Virgo buddy with a coffee problem. Up next in the lineup is the number 4, specifically in the context of Greek and Roman humors. In case you missed my last crash out, it brings up elements, balance, numerology, and a sense of organization. The last one I haven't talked about yet, mostly because I have a little bit of beef with it. The Luna Wolves regularly talk about something called the spear tip, which is an in-lore battle tactic where they basically get their best and their brightest and they hit really hard, really fast to try and shatter lines. It has to do with momentum, superiority, and a first to the fight mentality. This works really well. However, most people tend to assume that this is what sets them apart as a legion. That and the fact that they're kind of genetically predisposed to look exactly like their Primarch. Now, I've only talked a little bit about the actual content of the books. The Luna Wolves are much more than a battle tactic. The hard part is you kind of have to squint and read between the lines because they're not there for very long, and there's a lot of subtle information packed into these sort of tropes that Dan Abnett leaves for those of us who like to look. Let's put this together. So with all of these little set pieces in mind and a little bit of the meta out of the way, who are the Luna Wolves? They are a legion driven by the law of experience, with strict codes dependent on personal and communal feedback. These guys live with both feet on the ground. The law of their life is might makes right. That's a very simple way to look at the world around you. It's so simple, in fact, that it's actually a trap. What starts as simple tools finish simple problems becomes us versus them. The galaxy is black and white to them, and the animal intensity and feral unstoppability of them make them nothing shy of a perfect legion. Their individualistic, hyper-aggressive vices are balanced out by pack council and group perspective, flavored with a crime family loyalty that would be a difficult thing to turn against them. This is clear in the books, but the more subtle tones point us in the direction of their actual story arc, which is a pipeline fall from grace. I mean, think about it. You're up against a lone Luna Wolf. Space Marine be damned. This guy is one of the most dangerous people on Earth, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the augmentations, and everything to do with his personality and his philosophy. He's incredibly violent, he's aggressive, and he's motivated. He also has the rules, not just spelled out, but carved into the back of his hand. He knows exactly who he is and who you are, and he knows that his purpose is to reduce you to paste. He will then curb stomp you into next week, then go back to his homies to show them the selfies he took besides a U-shaped crater in the pavement, and there's nothing you can do about it because this guy knows he's top dog. And he will not listen to reason because he's already decided what's right and what's wrong. He thinks he's the good guy. To make matters worse, he's going to go back home to his homies and they are going to buy him a round of drinks and then immediately turn around and try to one-up whatever he just did. We know that the Luna Wolves are drawn to little rituals, and they turn their resumes into ritual. Their connection to the moon is unmistakable. The Mournival actually have phases of the moon branded onto their armor, and while we know it's a symbol of the subconscious and maybe a little bit of underlying esotericism, the weight that the Mournival attach to this turns it from a choice to a pseudo-ritual. They use this as a fairly harmless way to make themselves feel connected to their brothers, yet set apart from their cousins. But if you're not opposed to pseudo-rituals, it's only a matter of time before suddenly you're involved in a real ritual. Have you ever heard of the frog in a boiling pot of water metaphor? Essentially, it means that a frog will sit in a pot of boiling water and eventually boil itself to death. But you can't do this all at once. You have to turn the heat up by slow increments so that the frog itself doesn't notice and it naturally hop out of the pot of boiling water. So what starts as an induction ritual eventually turns into lodge meetings, eventually turns into...
Take a good look, Garvey, said Garriddon. You're gonna be just like them. I'm going to put a demon in you.
Spoilers, I guess. The Horus Heresy is almost entirely driven by the characters involved. That's why there isn't a singular cause behind it. It's a massive haystack of decisions made by hundreds of different people, and you could sit there for days trying to figure out which straw actually broke the camel's back and just end up with a pile of hay and a dead camel. It doesn't help that there are a dozen or more authors, each adding their own interpretations and their own set of skills to inflict upon these characters. Since this is a part 1, I'm going to revisit every single one of these characters when we discuss the Sons of Horus to talk about their inevitable fates. So, before you run to the comments section to tell me how much I missed, I promise, I know, this is the Luna Wolves video, and the Luna Wolves are not around that long. So, we're just gonna keep it light, have a little fun. We're going to start with Abaddon because you have probably heard of him. The name Abaddon is a Hebrew name that means angel of destruction, but is often referenced as a place of destruction in other Hebrew texts. Ezekyle is a play on Ezekiel, meaning God will strengthen, and I think it's super appropriate. He's tall and he's powerfully built, even for Astartes standards. His voice is deep enough to where people notice and can pick him out of a crowd of other space marines who can speak below the range of human hearing if they feel like it. Like many of the Luna Wolves, Horus's gene seed took hold aggressively in Abaddon, giving him wide-spaced eyes, a nice nose, and a really clean shave. His hair is black and very long, usually styled into a top knot when he's not in a helmet, but worn loose whenever he's upset and isn't in the mood to get teased by brothers with less extravagant hairstyles. Tarik Torgaddon is tagged in the description. Abaddon is a pretty big deal in the modern setting, with his 13 Black Crusades culminating in the fall of Cadia, as well as a number of fascinating accomplishments that I could go on about. He wasn't always the warlord blessed by the powers that be that we know today. Unlike a lot of characters on this list, we actually know a little bit about Abaddon's history. We know that he was once upon a time a loyal legionary, and he gave everything for his Primarch. And before that, he was a young man who found himself utterly betrayed by his father. Abaddon's very first dispassionate birthday card was mailed in by notorious Chthonian criminal crime lord called Torgaddon. Torgaddon was one of the most powerful criminal warlords to ever crime a Chthonian criminal war. Say that 10 times fast. One day, Torgaddon woke up and said, "Ezekyle, my son, you're a good kid, so I'm gonna make you crime king of Chthonian. What do you say, pal? Happy birthday. I just need one favor from you. You gotta kill your best friends." Yeah, like, I want you to look them in the eyes when you do this, too. I want direct eye contact, and then you just drop a piano from the 3rd story. Look, buddy, I know you care about your little friends, but you can't afford to let anyone or anything stand in the way of you being king. To which Abaddon said, "Fuck that noise," and then killed his father with a piano dropped from the 3rd story. Abaddon wanted nothing to do with rulership if it meant betraying his friends, and he chose to leave everything behind rather than make a grab for the title. This act became Chthonian legend, and it would serve Abaddon well, because after he was jumped by a rival gang in the wastes, he was rescued by none other than Hastur Sejanus, and some dude named Qruze, who I guess was a member of the Mournival. Abaddon was then recruited into the Luna Wolves, made into a space marine, then fought his way to captain of the first Justarid Terminator Company, a company most famous for painting their plate completely black. They also serve as the Primarch's personal honor guard. During the Ullanor Crusade, Abaddon and his company of Terminators valiantly held the line to give the Primarch an opening to kill the Orc war boss Urlak Urg. Abaddon fought so hard and for so long that Horus returned to find Abaddon close to death and buried beneath a mountain of orc corpses. Every other Terminator in his company slain. At some point, Abaddon earned the prestigious title of Mournival Captain, which he holds when we meet him in the opening of Horus Rising. There, he is leading the charge to avenge the Mark IV power armor that looked so good on Hastur Mr. November Sejanus, and we are treated to a scene. Over the Vox, he starts to tease because Loken broke into an enemy stronghold before Abaddon's own first company, and this interaction establishes Abaddon as a hot-headed but benevolent older brother figure to Loken specifically. We see Abaddon at the peak of his career here. He's cool, he's confident, and fairly sensible when battle is concerned. He reveals that, when voting for a new Mournival captain, Abaddon actually spoke in favor of Loken over characters like Luc Sedirae or Xavier Jubal. Sedirae was the more vicious warrior, and Jubal was going to die later in the book, and Abaddon had the sense to know when a brother was a little too obsessed with glory, and who wasn't really main character material. As such, we are just as surprised as Loken to discover Abaddon at the Warrior Lodge meeting. For perspective, this is kind of like running into the vice president of your company at what was supposed to be movie night with the boys, but actually turned out to be that Roman astrology cult from Montana. But are we really that surprised? Abaddon has proven to us what brotherhood means to him. He grew up in a gang, violently casting off the water of the womb for the blood of the covenant, and he does so until his tragic finale. We know he loves a club, and he loves an oath, and in a way, it turns him into a surprisingly selfless character, willing to give himself completely to the collective rather than satisfy his own needs. So, when Erebus shows up with promises of fraternity, higher purpose, and true companionship regardless of rank or glory, of course Abaddon jumped at the chance to lay himself out on the altar. From what we know about him, he practically gave Erebus the knife. As 6319 is forced into compliance and the planet of murder is dominated soon after, we meet the Interrex. The Interrex were a spacefaring society of abhumans who lived in harmony with an obscure Xenos species called the Kinnebrach. This, of course, is icky. So, when the Primarch was deciding whether or not he wanted to eradicate the Interrex, Abaddon was first to vote for all-out war. That war broke out on accident, and Horus was naturally distraught at losing a potential ally in the crusade. Abaddon, however, wasn't all that upset by this. After the Interrex were neatly obliterated, Horus made the decision to rename the Lunawolves to the significantly less sexy Sons of Horus. All of this is introduction to Abaddon as a character, not just a figure of lore, and my job is to prepare the way for you to enjoy him as an active participant in the narrative, rather than a background bad guy, mixologist, and frat house president from hell. I also am trying to do this with minimal spoilers. In the 40K setting, Abaddon is kind of this meme. He's this big evil villain who's never allowed to really win, and whether or not it's objectively true, it makes him seem like a loser in every situation that takes place outside of chaos-focused circles, which is only half of the picture and kind of disrespectful to his character. Don't get me wrong, he's absolutely, certifiably a loser. He's just a nuanced loser. As I introduce you to more characters down this list, I'd like you to try and spot the similarities. It all comes back to these vicious cycles of black and white, us versus them, me and the family. And Abaddon, as well as the other characters on this list, all possess qualities that come from the outright abuse that these cycles perpetuate. Throughout the series, we see them confront increasingly high-stakes questions with the same answer, and each time they choose, we watch the results hold less and less water. By the end of the series, you really start to miss the Lunawolves. Moving on to Hastur Sejanus. Hastur Sejanus is the coolest, smartest, most well-put-together space marine that the Emperor ever had a hand in conceiving. He's a brilliant strategist, a noble warrior, a faithful son, and he's drop-dead gorgeous. His eyes sparkle like silver, his jawline could cut glass. He wears his ivory hair in a short, in-chic mohawk, and his dark, beautiful skin was the envy of dermatologists everywhere. You could scour the galaxy top to toe, and you would never find a more perfect image of an angel of the Emperor. He's also dead, died off screen, and there are no books about him. We know he fought on Olenor, we know he pulled Abaddon from a Chthonian garbage can like a raccoon, and we know that he was apparently buddies with Phocis Takar of the Thousand Suns. I don't know. Beyond that, we don't know much about him, and we don't have to. The Hastur-shaped hole in the hearts of everyone around him is the interesting part, and more specifically, how his memory is manipulated. Like the Legion itself, it's that memory and the consequences of those acting in the name of that memory that serve to drive his corner of the plot. He's not meant to be a character. We are meant to feel his absence in the same way as if he were one. During Horus's vision on Davin's moon, Erebus took on the appearance of Hastur Sejanus in an attempt to manipulate Horus to the side of chaos. This kind of worked. Horus adored Sejanus, and it's kind of gut-wrenching to read how lost Horus was without his most cherished son and, frankly, favorite voice of reason. I believe that Sejanus was so important to Horus that much of the heresy would have played out differently if Sejanus had lived. His legion respected him, and he had Horus's ear more than any of the other Luna Wolves in history, second only to probably the Emperor. The thing about Horus is that he, like Abaddon, is also motivated by emotions, and I believe that Horus could have been both consoled and persuaded away from the events that followed because of how much Sejanus meant to him. After all, if Sejanus's image alone was enough to convince Horus that the Emperor needed to be destroyed, the real thing was probably capable of changing the course of the narrative. Do I think he could have stopped the heresy from happening? Absolutely not. Say it with me. The heresy was caused by a complex series of events. So, no, I don't think that Sejanus could have single-handedly dodged the whole affair, but I can say with chest that things would have played out a little different. Tarik Torgaddon is my favorite character. He's your favorite character. He's everybody's favorite character, and you know why? Because he's one of the few breaths of fresh air in the entire series. If you compare him to every Space Marine in all of Warhammer, Torgaddon is in the top 10 best to go drinking with, because out of 100,000 pit bulls, he seems to be one of the few you can trust around unsupervised toddlers. He's charming, socially conscious, and really, really fucking funny. Compared to his brothers, it's almost shocking to meet him in the story, because the first thing he does is just immediately start dicking with Garviel Loken, and it completely goes over Loken's head. His eyes and hair are dark, usually a dark brown in most art. His features are described as saturnine, which in this situation means moody or intense, not heavily armored and round. Torgaddon is the sanguine of the Mournival. He's the lifeblood and heart of the team. Basically, Torgaddon is the morale guy, and it seeps past the fourth wall to bring the reader closer to the characters in the story. The secret to realistic storytelling is not actually grit or grimdark, especially not grimdark. The secret is implied diversity through contrast. His easy charisma and sense of humor form one end of a sliding scale, and if we put, say, Abaddon at the other end, everyone else that falls in between suddenly feel very spread out and diverse, even though it's just Space Marine follow order, this one jokes, this one doesn't. It's an illusion, and it tricks your brain into thinking that the characters are more human-like, and thus the story feels a lot more realistic. In lore, Torgaddon is no slouch. This guy is second captain for a reason. This means that the only one nastier than him in a fight would probably be Abaddon. Torgaddon does not miss. This guy is one of the most competent people in the room at any given time, and the fact that he chooses to be funny implies some interesting things about him, especially considering that he's wickedly intelligent and a force of nature on the battlefield. So why would he use all of this ability to make them smile? What has he really got going on in there? It could be that he does just have a good heart and he wants to provide some light in a very, very grim, dark galaxy, and he's good at it. It's nice to spend time with a comic relief character that doesn't come off as Ben from Treasure Planet or Jar Jar goddamn Binks. However, makes you wonder what would happen if he ended up, I don't know, broken and brutalized only to have the pieces of his very being reforged by pain and beaten into the shape of something terrible and cruel. Yeah, just a thought. The resident Nightmare Blunt participant and presiding sad sack of shit would be Horus Aximand. This guy is a bummer, but it serves a purpose. The Luna Wolves are a very high-energy legion, and often they need someone to sigh heavily and remind them that not every idea is a good idea. Please take Abaddon out of that canon, thank you very much. Horus Aximand also looks exactly like the Primarch Horus, like it's uncanny, so his brothers call him Little Horus, because he's Horus, but little. Many of the Luna Lunawolves are exposition pieces to be developed. Horus Aximand is one of these characters. He's established as a pessimist given to executive dysfunction, and he kind of leaves it at that, preparing you for a tragedy of inaction to come. I talk about the choices that the Lunawolves make, what they decide to put above something else. He is one of the unique few who chooses to do nothing. It's actually a pretty big theme throughout the whole series, and let's just say it doesn't go very well for him. Xavier Jubal is a crossfire character. His only functional purpose is to give the audience stakes and further the plot by messing with the emotions of the protagonist. He was jealous of Loken's promotion to Mournival, and the resulting disappointment left him vulnerable to some sort of undiscovered warp-based mental condition. It was demons. It was demons. This guy went a little cuckoo bananas during the Whisperheads campaign on 6319 and murdered a bunch of his brothers. In Warhammer, the human experience is not only an active force in the universe, but it is a sentient thing, often seeking the individual's destruction. The Emperor did not want people to know this because it's scary, and since he refused to inform the rest of the Imperium of this cosmic fact, Horus Lupercal and the Lunawolves were utterly blindsided when the, quote, enemy terror tactic worked so well on a fully realized Space Marine legionary that the guy rose from the dead and mutated into a shambling mound of teeth and plague. The Remembrancer Euphrati Keeler caught this episode on camera, and the resulting picture provided some of the first evidence of demons up to this point. Remember, no one believes in anything outside of the physical world in this time period, and this was one of the many small revelations that fed into Horus and his legion betraying the Emperor. Jubal was among the first to pay the price for the Emperor's lies, and poor Garviel Loken had to clean up the mess. Next up, we have Tybalt Marr and Verulam Moy. The name Tybalt comes from Shakespeare, and Verulam, I don't know, it kind of sounds like an onion to me, but they are called the either and the or. They're a box set, not to be separated under any circumstances. They're kind of like Rocky and Bullwinkle, cookies and cream, peanut butter and chocolate, the mattress and the tag. They're called twins in the book, but if this is biological or more of a soulmates situation, we will never actually know. They had an uncanny resemblance to each other and an implacable synergy, which led to their respective companies being sent into battle alongside one another whenever they could. Given that the Lunawolves choose which companies will fight by drawing lots, on Murder we actually see Tybalt Marr lose the lottery, while Verulam Moy gets to rack an industrial can of raid spray and have the time of his life, fighting unholy cyber spider bees with swords for arms on a planet with such unpleasant weather conditions that Hurricane Katrina would pack up her typhoons in shame. This type of scenario is a Space Marine's playground, and naturally Marr was a little bummed out that he didn't get to participate in the initial drop. The tragedy of being left behind becomes a theme for him, so put that in your pocket for later. Luc Sedirae, mentioned him before. Big ol' nasty blonde boy. He was also considered for Mournival, but was voted out on the account that this guy is bloodthirsty. He cares about glory more than anything, and it comes around to bite him in the ass by the time the Sons of Horus replace the Lunawolves. Terrifying warrior, bleach blonde, probably looks a bit like Major Kill, very loyal to Horus, not so loyal to his hair. That will be funny later. If I was an elderly grandmother in the universe, I would pinch the shit out of this guy's cheeks and send him home with every chocolate chip cookie I have in my little grandma hab unit. After all, Nero Vipus is a growing boy. He's a brave soldier and he really should eat more. My grandma cookies are baked with love. Nero Vipus is Garviel Loken's best friend and sergeant of the 10th Company's Locasta Squad. He also serves as its acting captain after Loken is promoted to Mournival. During the 6319 campaign, Vipus gets his hand blown off by the false Emperor's elite guard, and he's a sport about it the whole time. He's also present at the Whisperheads, witnessing the tragic death and mutation of Xavier Jubal firsthand. Vipus is very compassionate, and he cares enough about mortals to go out of his way to catch one of them when Jubal hurls the nearest elderly remembrancer at Vipus's head like a wiffle ball at your punk-ass cousin. If you know even a little bit about Space Marines, it's more effort on their part to keep human beings alive around them than it is to just squash them by accident and not notice. So Vipus is a great guy. He's almost as funny as Torgaddon and just pleasant to read about. And this will age poorly when we talk about Istvan 3, where I'm not smiling when he's on screen. Some say he's a silver fox, others say he's an old fogey. Iacton Qruze served as a captain of the Luna Wolves since the Legion's beginning and throughout the Unification Wars. The stubborn old veteran couldn't seem to adapt to the new culture as the time of the Great Crusade progressed, and had an interesting propensity for voicing his opinions on everything. Whether those opinions were acknowledged or even noticed was debatable and circumstantial, and his legion called him the half-herd. Qruze personally believed his cold, soft-spoken Alpha Chad demeanor had earned him that nickname, but it was more likely because no one really listened to him, ever, even when he was right. People also probably stopped listening to him because the Chthonian-born original Luna Wolf had a lot of beef with Tarik Torgaddon, and who has beef with Tarik Torgaddon? Chthonian-born original Luna Wolf. Let me see, 1 second. Oh, False Gods by Graham McNeil. Okay. I don't know where Graham was at or what his situation is or whether or not he has an editor. I don't know about the state of the lore when he wrote this. But, dear reader, original legionaries are pretty much all Terran. Chthonian had not been discovered when the Great Crusade started. Qruze's only friend that we know about was actually a fellow Terran-born veteran, Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard. I can imagine that they got along in the same way that two old men in a bar just start swapping stories about how their hip or knee got replaced. After the discovery of Horus, Qruze pursued the position of first captain. He was considered for the Mournival after the death of Hastur Sejanus, but he never quite got there. The Primarch Rogel Dorn once described his dear nephew as a sycophantic suck-up willing to speak quietly in support of his commander for the sake of retaining favor. Ouch. Nonetheless, Iacton Qruze stayed loyal to the old ways of the Luna Wolves until he paid the heavy price for it at the hands of his own gene-father. He refused to break his loyalty to the original Legion and watched Horus fall from grace. He picked a black and white, chose one, and thus embodies the ethos of a true Luna Wolf. Now we get to talk about some human characters, because a legion is not just legionaries, there's people here, and I don't see a whole lot of stuff about them or covering them, really. The Luna Wolves fight alongside one or more contingents of human military, usually comprised of both Imperial Army and Imperial Navy. Hector Varvarus and Boaz Comnenus are in charge of those respectively. Both get very little screen time, but they exist to remind us that Space Marines are absolutely not human, and forgetting that can have dire consequences. It's also a soft reminder that a legion is not exclusively legionaries. There's a lot of moving pieces, and most people tend to just fixate on the Space Marines while the human characters get completely left out. Ignace Karkasy is one of those who gets left out a lot, which is sad. He's one of the first remembrancers on our list. Big guy, little greasy. I imagine Alan Rickman if he were an alcoholic loitering outside of a Hobby Lobby. Remembrancers are basically wartime reporters charged with documenting the Great Crusade. Just about any art form is allowed, and Ignace Karkasy is a poet. He's also a colossal piece of shit. He's not a bad character or an antagonist, he's just such a douche that one of the first things he does in the book is get the shit beat out of him for being a contrarian asshole in front of a bunch of soldiers. He's a self-important, vaguely lecherous, alcoholic poet looking to reignite his career by joining the Great Crusade. He is so fun to read about because he just sucks too bad. And he sucks bad enough that Garviel Loken actually sponsored him to prevent him from being just thrown off the ship, which is a very generous thing for a captain of the Space Marines to do for a guy he doesn't know that well. Second on the list of remembrancers, Euphrati Keeler is this universe's version of a photographer. It's called a pictographer here. That will be on the vocabulary test. As far as we know, she's completely average looking with no distinguishing features except she dresses like a boy sometimes, I guess. But don't worry, that doesn't stop anyone from looking at her boobs through tactfully feminine men's army fatigues. Because she's a girl, guys. I'm Graham McNeil and I have seen boobs before, guys, I swear. Why are you laughing at me? I don't care who you are. There's a cute way to write tomboys, and she-breasted boobily like a boy is the fast way for me to accidentally push you into the nearest body of water after I make certain that your stupid fucking iPhone is in your pocket when I do it. As an impetuous woman, my favorite thing to see in fiction is another impetuous woman I can point at and feel validated. Don't mistake me, Euphrati Keeler is not a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. She's just the sort of person that will walk into an embarkation deck and take pictures of space marines, even though you just told her, don't take pictures of the space marines. It's not out of spite or to prove a point. She's just there to do a job, and she isn't about to let stupid shit like rules or consequences get in the way. Like any girl with boy autism, she finds her purpose in the divine light of Jesus Christ. The Emperor. Emperor worship. That's right. Get this. The evil religious regime of the modern setting pretty much finds its roots in a solitary tomboy after she witnesses a horror beyond comprehension. Small stone, big ripples. You get the picture. She's the one who took the picture of Xavier Jubal during his completely rational and explainable meltdown, where he scientifically and sensibly rose from the dead to wreak havoc on the Luna Wolves and their remembrancers. She narrowly avoided being tossed like a half-court shot, but the event was so traumatic for her that she rapidly girl-bossed herself into a self-destructive spiral. She didn't know what was real any longer, and this led to alcoholism and isolation, spending weeks at a time completely secluded from the rest of society. This does lead to one of my favorite interactions in the entire series, where Garviel Loken shows up to do a wellness check in the middle of her getting head from some soldier, and Loken could not give less of a shit. He throws the poor schmuck out on his ass and then inquires about the pictures Keeler took. She then informs Captain Loken that the truth about the universe was too much to bear. Pandora's box was open, and Keeler had to pretend that she hadn't been made aware of an entire world chocked to the brim with creatures only bent on making her suffer. Humanity was never meant to know that there were things from beyond, things that were spending every waking hour of their existence working towards causing pain. Euphrati Keeler, wearing nothing but a bedsheet, pours herself a glass of alcohol and tells Loken that it was easier to pretend that none of it had happened at all than to face the dread of the knowledge. She had deleted her own copies of the photos weeks ago, and she claimed that she didn't care about the truth anymore. She had almost convinced herself into believing it to be nothing more than a bad dream. And Loken listens to her. It's such a tender expression of camaraderie, given that these two haven't really met yet. Yeah, they've never hung out and don't really know each other outside the genetically modified grace of an eidetic memory, and everyone knows who Captain Loken is. He doesn't have a reason to be kind to her. He wouldn't even face any consequences if he wasn't. Nonetheless, where he had every opportunity to get angry or frustrated, or even just walk in and leave with an unsatisfying answer, Loken instead chooses to spend a quiet moment protecting a citizen of the Imperium. The Astartes are called Angels of Death by the Emperor himself, and this scene is a beautiful reminder that there are guardian angels out there too. Kyril Sindermann is something called an Imperial Iterator. Iterator. He's a master public speaker whose job is to spread the Imperial truth to worlds brought into compliance. This is also the guy that got chucked across the room like the flying nun. The Imperial truth is propaganda handcrafted by the Emperor of Mankind. Alongside our material reality, there exists a dimension made completely of emotions and spiritual energy. This is called the warp. It is also called the Immaterium or the Empyrean, not to be confused with Imperium. Imagine for a moment a sea, where every drop of that ocean is a human emotion. Everything from grief, love, anger, and joy manifest in the warp. If you know anything about the universe, then you know that the Milky Way hasn't felt a whole lot of good emotions in the past billion or so years, so naturally her metaphysical reflection can get kinda kooky and zany. Like the ocean, the warp has currents and flows, ice caps and trenches that go deeper than mankind can fathom. You may think of demons as fish, if you like, but they're more like dense pockets of seawater that gain sentience. Now, demons are constantly trying to manifest themselves in the materium, the real world. But vague anxiety or solemn contemplation are not things you would bump into in a dark alley, so things like this need a vessel. A particularly butthurt space marine traipsing around a haunted cave usually works out pretty well. According to the Emperor, all of this is a load of baloney. He figured that ignorance was bliss, and by forcing his empire to pretend the faucet wasn't running, he would deny the warp a significant flow of power. Spoiler alert, the house flooded, and Xavier Jubal drowned in the sink. Kyril Sindermann's job was to perpetuate the lie that there was no afterlife, no gods, no demons, no spirits, or anything of the like. He and the other Imperial iterators would travel with expedition fleets and illuminate their populations with the Imperial truth. This was not optional. Additionally, part of the Iterator's job was to actually educate the Astartes. Yes, Space Marines have eidetic memories and plus 150 IQs or whatever, but reading is nerdy. And why would they do that when they can be punching shit and shooting guns big enough to blow my arms off? Kyril Sindermann is Garviel Loken's personal blockhead prevention, and gave him a proper education in poetry, atheism, mathematics, rhetoric, and critical race theory. This does not stop Loken from being a bit of a blockhead, but everyone is a fucking blockhead when Graham McNeil gets his greasy Cheeto fingers all over them. Sindermann is a rational person above all, and he remained rational after surviving the Whisperheads and Xavier Jubal's brush with the powers that be. Sindermann couldn't explain what he saw, and he dealt with the trauma in the only way a scholar knows how. He sequestered himself away in the library and spent months poring over forbidden knowledge, unaware of the dangerous waters he was unconsciously treading. Mersadie Oliton is one of the baddest bitches this side of the Ghoul Stars. When we first meet her, she is a documentarist trying to get into the graces of Captain Garviel Loken with the goal of presenting a hands-on eyewitness account of the Great Crusade from the perspective of the people fighting the Great Crusade. To assist her, she actually has an augmentation implanted in her skull that gives her access to a photographic archival memory, which is why her head looks like one end of a football in all of her art. She uses these recordings to stitch together accounts of what she's seen and felt, all stored on removable memory coils. It's kind of like a Discovery Channel documentary. She's documenting a war. Mersadie is curious and unafraid to ask questions. If you take away anything about her character, I want it to be the word courageous. She is probably the bravest character in Warhammer, and her first act of iron will is so startling to Captain Loken that he decides to give her the exclusive right to interview him about Space Marine things. Of course, Loken tells her every detail of his battles, down to the score marks left by axes and enemy plate, but shell calibers and battle tactics aren't good enough for Oliton. To the captain's surprise, she asks him about how, of all things, an angel of the Emperor felt during war. This marks the beginning of a sincere and intimate emotional relationship between the pair. Loken trusts her deeply, and she's privy to a side of Loken that very few other characters get to see. He's fascinated by her and treats her far gentler than one would expect from an Astartes, while she serves to remind him that he's human underneath all the genetic enhancements. Now, look at the keys, jangling keys. I need you to pay attention. Warhammer is a lot like a Louis L'Amour novel. Usually the most schmoozing you get is a kiss and fade to black. Proper romances are largely interpretive things that you have to read in between the lines for, at least concerning Space Marines. They are not castrated, and they do form significant and complicated emotional attachments to people and ideas. But Space Marines don't experience physical attraction without some sort of significant prompt. If they do, it's a complicated blend of aesthetic wonder and oathbound devotion, or a strong indicator that they are about to turn super evil super fast. Like, you are probably too late by the time you notice. Mersadie Oliton and Garviel Loken are structured as a romance. Now hear me out, they check every box, and that's before I mention the sheer amount of time they spend ogling each other. They're a thing. I will kill, fight, build a house, raise generations, and die on this goddamn hill. And if you're going to be a dweeb about it, then I have a few boring and stale recommendations for you to consider over there in the corner, where I won't be tempted to flick you between the eyes. Yeah, functionally, Mersadie Oliton is a love interest. It's almost puritanical with how it's set up. Beautiful woman catches the interest of soldier man for one reason or another, and the two spend a couple books pining and admiring one another's backsides while stuck in a psychosexual orbit around duty to their chosen ideology until disaster strikes, and it's too late. It's a tale as old as time, and I get suckered into it with every new rendition. I am such a cheeseball. Some of you probably think I'm projecting, but just you fucking wait until we get to the Sons of Horus video. Open mouth, insert foot, you goddamn turkey. On the subject of Garviel Loken, we have finally arrived at the man, the myth, the legend. John Warhammer himself. If you don't like him, and I don't persuade you into liking him, then I haven't done my job, and you may throw tomatoes at me if you feel so inclined. But Garviel Loken is that guy. He was there when Horus slew the Emperor. He's the reason Lucius is eternal. He looked Exterminatus in the eyes, and the virus bomb blinked first. Captain, weapons expert, fearless fighter with a heart of solid gold, and handsome to boot. It's no wonder he serves as the Mournival's mucus man. If the Horus Heresy has a main character, it's probably Garviel Loken. Out of all of the perspective characters, he's the one we spend the most time around. There is a difference between a protagonist and a main character. Protagonist is just a fancy word for your story's POV, their point of view. It doesn't have that much to do with whether or not they're the hero or even all that important to the story. Your main character is the character that gets the most development. Often they are the same character, but in a series as logistically massive as the Horus Heresy, it's not always possible to discern that. In this case, out of 2,000 plus characters, Garviel arguably gets the most cohesive and expansive development arc, partly because of the major plot points he's around to deal with, which just so happens to be most of the big ones. The entire series opens with him, and he is there to see it through to the end. When he's around, we are usually riding on his shoulder, witnessing the events through his eyes, thus he is our protagonist, our point of view. Since we are also privy to a lot of his thoughts and feelings, and are meant to metabolize his struggles alongside him, that is what turns him into a main character. We aren't a member of his audience as he recounts a story. We are also there when Horus slew the Emperor, and when afterwards became a time quite devoid of laughter, we are there beside him, listening to the same terrible silence that comes when there is no one left to laugh with, and you've come too far now to break down and scream, so you just stand there and wonder where it all went wrong. Some people accuse him of being boring, but that's because your protagonist should never ever start out more interesting than the person reading about them. He's not boring, he's simple, and simple characters allow the reader to project onto them, to make the character their own and fall in love with the character through what the reader sees in themselves. Loken is honest, humble, competent, and compassionate, all objectively good traits that aren't meant to be complicated, and those are things that we all possess at least a little bit of. Yeah, grimdark galaxy, there is only war. Garviel Loken would be a horrible person in the universe of Strawberry Shortcake, but in a setting where Dark Lord Sinisterius wore Crimacus the Cruel, kicker of puppies and plunderer of small business tip jars, devotes entire planets to squashing widows and orphans into evil immortality gruel so that he can sneeze on babies for all eternity. I don't think Garviel Loken is that bad. Great Crusade Warhammer is a tough universe to live in, but there is a lot less baby sneezing in this setting compared to 40k. Garviel Loken is the hero of the story. He's our hero, and I can't wait to talk about him more. When we meet him, he's just a guy doing his thing. The word I used before was simple. He's a space marine. Space marines fight for the Great Crusade, and they fight as best they can until they die for the Great Crusade. He's good at being a space marine, and he believes in the imperial truth with everything he's got in both his little hearts. He takes his role as defender of humanity so seriously that he goes the extra mile for the humans he defends, as shown to us by Euphrati Keeler and Ignace Karkasy. Ding ding ding, good guy, hero shit. Things only go wrong when he's forced to question his own simplicity. His setup and fall is centered around the awful realization that while he believes that his purpose is to lay down his life in the name of a united, defended, and deeply beloved humanity, he finds out far too late that no one else, even Loken's closest friends, seem to be on the same page. Both Nero Vipus and Tarik Torgaddon drop the imperial truth like a bad ex as soon as it falls apart, instead choosing to remain loyal to Garviel out of unconditional love for him. Dissonance of ethos is one thing, but the thing that turns the altercation from agree to disagree, brother, to a 6-year civil war is the fact that Garviel is psychologically incapable of imagining a world where another person would willingly sneeze on a baby. The sort of reasoning behind it just doesn't make sense to him. During Horus Rising, he gets invited to the so-called movie night, fronting for a growing cult, and he hates it the whole time. He didn't have a problem with the idea of equality across ranks and stronger bonds between warriors. No, not at all. Loken dipped out because the meeting was technically a secret, and secret bad. There's no room for nuance with him. He's just a humble space marine, making his rounds, being just lovely to human women, and exploding things with big artillery. He's not stupid. Blockheaded, yes. Kind of a dum-dum, a little. But Loken is never really stupid, and never incompetent or ignorant. With his own troops, he's very level-headed and fair, with an effortlessness that belies the Luna Wolves' reputation as gangbangers and thugs. For instance, Loken was going to give Xavier Jubal the role of acting company captain until the Mournival convinced him to give the role to Nero Vipus instead. Loken originally favored seniority and experience over bestie status. He's very blunt, but consistently polite unless they walk in on him while he's polishing his armor in his skivvies, which is how he meets Mersadie Oliton, and where we find out what he actually looks like. Fucking sit down and listen to this. Come here. She sighed inwardly at the splendor of his physique, the knotted muscles, the old ridge scars. He was handsome too, this one. Fair hair, almost silver, cut short, his pale skin lightly freckled, his eyes gray like rain. What a waste, she thought. I'm supposed to come out of that with the idea that he's this gun-toting murderous slab of genetically enhanced beef with no feelings or personality beyond unga bunga alien bad? Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm wondering how soft his lips are after a sentence like that, and it's not my damn fault. Okay, girl, get it together. Loken is our protagonist for much of it, and our main character through pretty much the whole series. He's a good guy, but with just enough faults to keep him interesting. He's going to come up on this channel a lot. We have a couple videos planned just for him alone, so get comfortable. He's going to be around for a bit. Throughout the book, the legionaries of the Luna Wolves always seem on the verge of losing some sort of psychological battle, carefully towing the line between too far and a means to an end. They're a perfect example of the moment when a clan of honorable warriors becomes a cult. Every trait I just mentioned is a double-edged sword, and it's aimed straight at their throat. The sort of hyper-individualized fraternity that they maintain actually panders to a never-ending spiral of individual corruption, where each slight is rationalized internally, validated externally, and then competed against by their brothers. The cute little boys' night handshakes suddenly turn into real dark magic rituals, and it literally opens the gates to let the devil into their ranks by the front door. And they can't back out of this because all they see is us and them. It's important to understand how far the human mind will rationalize anything rather than face the truth. Even the quote-unquote good guys of the Luna Wolves cling to this sort of rigid worldview. For example, Iacton Qruze throws the woman who brought hard evidence of the heresy to Primarch Rogul Dorn completely under the bus, abandoning her to rot in prison for years and outright lying about it in the name of his new alpha dog. Little Horus Aximand slowly wastes away, ripped apart between his loyalty to his fraternity and the heartbreak and devastation of his own actions. Garviel Loken spends 2 books so blissfully loyal to the Great Crusade that he ignores the signs until it's far, far too late, where he completely shatters under the weight of the horrifying consequences because he won't face the truth, and thus gets blindsided by one of the greatest tragedies in the heresy. With every Luna Wolf, there's good guys and bad guys, us and them, and it completely rips them apart. I think I mentioned before that the Luna Wolves are an extremely dense legion, but you have to really sit down with them and meet them on their own terms, read between the lines, understand what the author is putting in front of you, because the Luna Wolves are on the outs by book 2. And compared to 54 books, that's like a 20-minute conversation you have with some dude at the bus stop. And the Legion, like that guy, you never see again. Instead, you're left to wonder. This is the role they play in the story. They're a ghost legion. They're a shadow of an idea. They are the glory days personified. The Great Crusade boiled down to a single, simple, saccharine idea where humanity's manifest destiny was a happily ever after in a grim, dark galaxy. It was also an HOA without any of those dirty Xenos loitering on the street with their antimatter boomboxes on their forelimbs. But of course, it was never that simple. But the Luna Wolves do a good job of convincing us that maybe, somewhere, it was.
Hey guys, it's Vic. I do most of the editing and some of the writing here. We at the Hotline want to say thank you for watching. We have huge plans for this channel, and we've been hoping to get this project sort of off the ground for maybe a year now, so it's super exciting to actually get going. So if you're interested in a community Discord server, cool stuff designed by Val and I, or supporting real hardworking voice actors, writers, and artists on our team fulfilling their passions, then let us know in any way you can manage. We are planning more lore videos, voiced excerpts, and a few silly opinion pieces, and eventually a full-fledged audio drama, so keep your peepers peeled for that. The goal is to get monetized so that Art Stotska can fight God and win. Anyways, thank you for being you, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.